water, one of our greatest resources. Its beauty unmatched as it flows purely from the mountains. We depend on the river for clean water, and the river depends on us to keep it clean. It's our responsibility. It's our river. The Catawba River and the many streams that feed into it provide drinking water to more than 1 million people every day. We're about to explore one branch of the Catawba River. Beginning in Burke County among the South Mountains, the South Fork is one of the Catawba River's most important tributaries. Thanks for joining us. I'm Joey Popp. The headwaters of the South Fork Catawba River are considered by the state of North Carolina as high quality. What that means, high quality being there are no concerns for wastewater disposal, agriculture, or construction runoffs. In fact, these waters are considered some of the best for trout fishing. Flowing from the South Mountain State Park, this stretch of the river is known as Jacob Fork. Downstream a bit, it meets the Henry Fork, which also originates in the South Mountains. Just a few short miles from its headwaters, the two bodies of water join. This is what we know as the South Fork Catawba River. The river flows through Catawba, Lincoln, and Gaston counties before emptying into Lake Wylie. Along the way, it supports industries, towns, and agriculture.
The South Fork is really one of the rivers that attracted our first industry here. Textiles, furniture, all got their water from this area and continue to do so.
The South Fork could also be an attractive recreational outlet if we maintain the health, safety, and beauty of this great natural resource.
You can see for yourself that it's a beautiful corridor of forests and wildlands. And the reason that more people don't enjoy it than they do is the fact that the water is so filthy.
It's a far cry from the high-quality water upstream where fishing is considered ideal.
The water's murky and stuff. Usually we just come down here and catch them and release them.
Pollution can enter the river directly from a pipe or can be carried from miles away from storm runoff.
The biggest threat to the South Fork Catawba River is twofold. One is the polluted runoff that goes into the river every time it rains. And the second is the high concentration of industrial dischargers still putting polluted effluent in the river.
Controlling waste from municipal and industrial dischargers is an important part of keeping the South Fork River clean. These point sources can be identified and regulated by state and federal agencies. But as individuals, our impact on this source of pollution is limited. Non-point source solution is quite a different story. Whether it's by reducing the trash in our streams or eliminating polluted runoff, we really can make a difference in preserving the South Fork.
Every time I see someone polluting the river, it's like the public just got dumped on. Because it's a public trust asset, it belongs to the public. It's theirs to use and enjoy, and no one has the right to pollute it and take the health of the river away from all of us.
It's our river, and it's our responsibility to keep it clean. Let's explore how people in the region are doing just that. Let's start with agriculture. What's being done on the farm to promote a cleaner watershed? Well, for one thing, scenes like this are being discouraged. Farmers like Edwin Wright are getting help from the Extension Service and the Soil and Water District to build fences to keep cows from entering a creek that eventually flows to the South Fork River. Before the project, cows used the creek for drinking water and to cool off during the heat of summer. In an effort to reduce pollution in the creek, Mr. Wright has dug a well in his pasture to pump fresh groundwater into a drinking pool for his cows.
It's to clean up the creek and make it a better creek. You can see since they've gone, that water's running clear, and A while ago it was muddy.
By keeping the cows out of the creek, Mr. Wright also keeps out bacteria and concentrated nitrogen from the cow's manure. And the erosion along the banks will eventually heal. We're looking at a badly eroded area. Are you telling me that someday that area will return
Oh, yes.
to an area that looks like this behind you?
Sure. Yeah. Once you eliminate or reduce the foot traffic of the animals there and their access to that area, the natural regeneration will recover just like a forest does anywhere. You just give it time naturally. You can do some things on your own to plant some trees if you like, but naturally it will heal and recover on its own.
More and more, farmers are using natural areas along streams to protect water quality. These areas are called buffer zones.
So with the buffer being the grass and the trees, that filters any runoff going to the stream. In other words, it's a filtering system. The nutrients in the manure that could possibly enter the stream is trapped, and the trees are supposed to utilize those nutrients, being nitrogen and phosphorus.
In addition to nutrients, the buffer vegetation can catch sediment, pesticides, and bacteria before they reach the water. Here's another example of how farmers are doing their share for a cleaner watershed. Manure waste from a dairy operation is collected in lagoons. This two-tier system stores the waste until it's time to dispose of it. North Carolina Cooperative Extension helps farmers learn how to manage the waste.
Well, without the lagoon, this waste would have just washed into the creeks and would have harmed our water supply, both with the nutrients and the bacteria that is part of waste.
Manure from the lagoons is eventually sprayed as a natural fertilizer into pastures, where the nutrients are absorbed by grasses such as Bermuda.
The ideal situation is to have cattle excluded from the streams, have a buffer along the stream, and then collect all the waste from the operation in lagoons and apply that to the field. So you basically have a system that recycles all of the nutrients and waste.
Crop farmers have also made progress towards protecting water quality.
Reduced tillage is simply disturbing the soil less. It is, instead of taking the crop off and tilling it into the ground, we're leaving it on the surface and then planting the next crop behind it.
In the South Fork Catawba watershed, soybeans are often planted directly into the residue of recently harvested wheat. By not disturbing the soil, this type of farming greatly reduces the amount of sediment entering our streams. This is one of several environmentally safe agricultural practices being implemented to maintain water quality. Today's farmer really can have a significant impact on the health of the South Fork.
If you look at the demographics, farmers probably comprise about 2% or less of our population, but in terms of the amount of land they own or control or have access to, it's a lot higher percentage than that. So by working with just a couple of individual farmers, you can impact a lot of acreage and a lot of areas inside watersheds. So their commitment to doing things that help protect our environment, groundwater, and that sort of thing is really important in making these type projects work.
The city of Lincolnton draws its water from this part of the South Fork Catawba River. 4 million gallons a day are treated for safe consumption through a complex system of filtering and chemical processing. Turbidity, which measures the cloudiness of the water, is one important test being run to ensure the cleanliness of the city water. On this particular day, the treated water ends up being 1,000 times clearer than what was drawn from the river. But before the water ever gets to this point, what you do in your own backyard could determine how much treatment is needed.
Whatever we do, whether it be at our house or going down the road if your car has an oil leak, eventually it's all going to get back to the water. And when it hits the water, whether it be a private well at the home or a municipal plant like this, we have to treat it and take care of it to make sure that it is safe to drink.
In towns and cities, residents may not recognize how quickly pollution from their neighborhood can reach our streams. Through storm drain stenciling, volunteer groups remind us to not dump hazardous materials such as motor oil into our storm drains.
People don't realize that storm drain water goes directly into our rivers and streams and then finally flows into the Catawba.
Stormwater runoff can also carry chemicals that we use to maintain our lawns. But if we use fertilizers and pesticides wisely, it benefits both our water quality and our checkbook.
You know, we see an insect or disease and our first inclination is to zap it right away. Well, that's not usually the best way. There's a lot of other things we can do. Read the label. Always read the label. That way you'll know how much you need to mix, how much you need to spray.
Another smart way to keep lawn chemicals out of our water is to leave natural areas on our property where fertilizers and pesticides are not needed. Near creeks and streams, natural areas also serve to catch contaminated runoff before it reaches the water. Runoff is a significant source of contamination and should be a major concern for developers, especially with the highly erodible soils along the banks of the South Fork. From Hickory to Charlotte, commercial and residential developments flourish on thousands of acres of land where once only fields and forests prevailed. The South Fork often bears the brunt of this growth.
Sedimentation is the #1 pollutant in our waters by volume. And the source of that sedimentation is the #1 source is from development just like this.
In areas like this new home subdivision, laws require developers to keep sediment from running off of the construction site. Silt fences are one option for preventing sediment runoff. Another is a sediment basin.
No, we built this. This is a sediment pond, sediment basin, and the water is impounded here from the disturbed areas, and all the sediment, everything will leach down to the bottom. The sediment, all the particles that's in the water, we want to stay here. We don't want those in our creeks and branches.
Silt fencing works basically the same way. The plastic holds back erosion, allowing settled water to seep into the ground. Here's a new and beautiful way to collect runoff and treat it naturally. This is a man-made wetland located behind Ashbrook High School. The basin collects water from impervious surfaces like parking lots, buildings, and roads. As the land in the South Fork watershed continues to be developed, the amount of runoff from impervious surfaces increases.
Impervious area is one of those technical terms that we refer to area where water just runs off of pavement, rooftops, the stadium up here. Anything that's concrete, water just runs straight off of it and it causes a flooding problem downstream, and that's sort of why we're building these wetlands.
How is oil and pollution treated right here?
Filtration and settling. A lot of it settles with the sediment to the bottom of the wetland. There's some biological processes that are going on. There's a little bit of plant uptake of nutrients.
Without the wetlands, the untreated runoff would end up in a nearby creek that flows to the Catawba South Fork.
We couldn't have asked for it to turn out any better. Ashbrook High School is thrilled to death. They've decided to put a cross-country trail down here and use this site, which really they didn't use at all before.
Perhaps the most straightforward way to keep quality water is to preserve undeveloped land along waterways to act as buffer zones.
These buffers act as sponges and contain the water before it actually gets into the stream.
The Catawba Lands Conservancy is working hard to protect more undeveloped land along the South Fork.
Because this is where it all starts. And so protecting the buffer along these tributaries is extremely important.
Whether that tributary is in my backyard or here in the woods.
Absolutely. I think when you turn on the water at home in your tap, it has to run somewhere. And people sort of take that for granted. But it has to flow, and typically it flows into some drainage, and that drainage then flows into a larger tributary or river. And so protecting it from the source is very important.
Protecting our water also means protecting our natural heritage.
A walk in the woods like this in Gaston County, you never know what you're going to walk up on. What's this?
That is our big leaf magnolia, only found in this area.
Unique to the South Fork watershed, the leaves of this rare tree can grow to be 38